The scale of the surge coming towards us is of biblical proportion.
The Northern Ireland Department of Health are in the process of pushing through a medical tyranny bill to cement into legislation a more extensive and oppressive form of the emergency powers so detrimental not just to the economy, but more importantly, the physical and mental health of our people in an effort to move us into a healthopoly medical enslavement, where human rights no longer apply and our medical decisions can be dictated and enforced by other authorised people that have not even been named. We can be forced to have medical examinations, forced to go to hospital and detained there, forced to quarantine for up to 28 days, children kept from school for 28 days, forced to receive medical treatment, including a vaccine. That's right, forced vaccination. It explicitly states health measures will be court-ordered. Required to wear protective clothing such as masks, forced to attend training sessions on how to protect others, have restrictions on where you can go and with whom you can have contact, forced to abstain from work, businesses forced to close and restrictions on travel. Your GP could be under obligation to inform on you for an undefined list of diseases that could well include the flu, under the threat of a £5,000 fine if they don't. There will also be fines for parents, head teachers and the bereaved. These requirements extend beyond you to include things and premises. The thing referred to on page 47 can be seized, detained, quarantined, destroyed or disposed of. The thing can include agricultural animals, farmers, take note, and even pets. There will also be restrictions on what happens to dead bodies. Do you recall the trauma of not being able to be with your loved ones in their final hours and give them a decent, respectful burial? Do you want a repeat of any of this? Do they have the authority to push this bill through? Are we unwittingly conceding to giving them this authority and responding to the questions at all so that they can arrive at a manufactured consent? Is not responding at all an inferred consent? How does it affect border issues if Northern Ireland is in a state of quarantine? Will there be freedom of movement across the border? Further, there are implications on how this relates to criminal law. Public health appears to be saying we can't have any risk or harm. Criminal law actually allows for some risk as long as it's consensual. It also states you can have an order placed against you in court without the opportunity for you to be there and defend yourself, instead leaving you only with the right to appeal. The vital right to defend yourself will be taken away from you under the guise of public health. This is against magistrates' court rules and in violation of Article 6. Court orders can be obtained for those who are or may be infected. How will may be determined? Contact tracing? Would these actions even be for the greater good? If they are to replicate COVID, then it would seem not. The facts of COVID, as obtained through a Freedom of Information request, reveal that only 275 people died exclusively from COVID in Northern Ireland in the entire 4 years. None below the age of 38, and in the pandemic timeframe, the usual deaths from flu disappeared. The COVID numbers are quite close to the flu numbers. Meanwhile, NISR figures show death rates in Northern Ireland are still, even this year, at pandemic levels. What is causing these excess deaths? No doubt a few factors, which include lack of GP access and missed opportunity for diagnosis. Now juxtapose this with the facts of the medical mandates, again obtained through a Freedom of Information request. There have been 58 deaths and over 5,000 adverse reactions reported in Northern Ireland, and that's just those reported, with a significant amount of them in the younger demographic. Bear in mind the average age of death from COVID was 82. There was never any provable group benefit in taking it. It was a lie to say it stopped transmission. That has now been admitted, and we are yet to know the extent of the long-term side effects. On top of that, we have a mental health crisis from the effects of the mandates. Was it worth it? I have given you the statistics. You decide. Do you want to allow them or the WHO the power to do all this again? Now, maybe you weren't one of the over 5,000 adversely affected by the previous medical mandates conducted under coercion, or maybe you suspect you or a loved one were. What about the next time? Do you want to be forced into taking a medication, or do you want to decide for yourself? The truth is, all pharmaceutical products pose a risk of adverse reaction. This is why it should be up to the individual to make the decision for themselves under informed consent. Penicillin is great. You wouldn't mandate it though. Would this bill not remove informed consent and medical autonomy? Do you want that? And this is the crux of the issue. The government that you elected are telling you that they don't trust you to make the decisions. There is a glaring omission as to who is responsible when there are adverse reactions to what they decide to require us to take. Who will pay for subsequent medical treatment in a failing NHS, or compensation for injury or death? We saw the pharmaceutical companies receive indemnity protection in the last rollout. Will this bill protect the people as it claims, or the pharmaceutical companies? Also, who will pay the wages of those who are forced to stay off work and reimburse businesses forced to close? Surely this should be addressed in the document. So, what can you do? Because this won't stop unless we take action. The format of the response to this consultation is using the Delphi technique to arrive at the desired outcome with cleverly worded questions presenting you with a limited choice where the question bears no relation to the issue we should be concerned with. The claim can then be made that the people accepted the legislation, but this is without fully understanding it, hence arriving at a manufactured consent. There is no law to say you must answer the questions in the format presented in the consultation. There are 2 points here. First, presumed consent. Should you not first be asked if you do consent? This has been bypassed. You are being asked questions on the premise that you consented to something that you did not consent to. Should we not be voting on if we want to change our healthcare system to one of protectionism away from one of promotion of health, where we are seen as vulnerable rather than the strong, resilient people we pride ourselves on being? Where decisions can be dictated by international organisations such as the WHO, whose donors, incidentally, are 80% private, 20% public, whose interests will they be acting in favour of? The devolved powers we voted for, subjugated to a foreign entity, and changes within the legal framework of due process. I do not consent, and I believe a change of this magnitude would require a referendum. Secondly, the consultation itself needs to be called into question. The 2018 consultation principles on the UK Government website state consultation should be clear and concise, that lengthy documents should be avoided, that those consulted should be given the information to understand the issue and give informed responses. The framework of this document is engineered to limit responses, and with 79 pages and 47 questions that do not include the issues of concern cannot be considered to meet these principles. My personal response to this is to not participate in the agree-disagree questions. I will not be ticking any boxes. Rather, my response will be as a comment to the first question and to also send an email to back it up. It will read as follows. I do not consent to this bill. I refute your authority to ask these questions, presuming that I have consented to a fundamental change in the relationship between the government and the people of Northern Ireland, where we are ruled over rather than governed with. Under what authority are you asking these questions that, as far as I can see, do not bear any relation to the glaring concerns in the proposal in terms of how it affects my human rights? It is not made clear at all what rights I will be giving up for this supposed protectionism. I see it as an attempt to incite possible harm against the people in the absence of informed consent, and a possible attempt to impose an all-hazards approach to surveillance where it does not define the parameters of the surveillance. It is not a meaningful consultation. It was difficult to find, no media attention, no promotion, merely sent out to a selected few. Therefore, I am not accepting the credibility of the consultation or its questions. They do not meet the consultation principles in terms of document length, in that it would take even the most highly educated at least 3 hours to get through, and presents as an intimidating read. The format is designed to give a restricted rather than an informed response. It is not clear if this potentially negates the Belfast Agreement in terms of devolved healthcare and borders. Implications have not been presented in any capacity, nor has a definitive list of notifiable diseases or the method of diagnosis, PCR or other, been provided. It has not been made clear to whom else authority can be given, or if the forced mandates of protection will be grounded in fact-based science or computer modelling. all making an informed response impossible. The state overreach proposed in this document is a gross infringement on human rights and in direct contradiction to informed consent. The proposed changes to due process and the rule of law in Magistrates' Court breach Article 6 right to appear in court to hear, see and test the evidence, allowing then only the right to appeal, shifting the burden of proof, thus attempting to change the rules of the Magistrates' Court under the guise of public health. These changes present a constitutional issue that would require a referendum vote. Take this as my response to all further questions in this consultation. In short, I am challenging their authority to change the law and our fundamental relationship with the government without a public vote and their adherence or lack thereof to consultation principles. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and now I call upon you to take the time to act in response to this consultation, because if we don't act, this is a done deal. Take the key points I have mentioned and consider your own, and let our response be put to their legal department. For the sake of your children and mine, we need to act now and put an end to this attempt to enforce medical tyranny. Go to www.healthni.gov.uk for the consultation on the Public Health Bill with urgency. Send it to your MLAs. They've received this information in July and have failed to voice any concerns or make the public aware. Ask why. Send them your response and concerns. Ask directly, are they endorsing this bill or are they opposed to it, and instruct them to oppose it on your behalf. You have until the 27th of September to kill the bill.